All right, please be seated. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone tonight to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification course, another class. I'd like to welcome everyone that's online also watching tonight. And please be aware that you can, depending upon what media or what type of device you're using, you should be able to go up to the top right-hand corner and do a drop-down menu and download the book that we're studying out of, which in this case tonight is the self-control. Yes, stop. See it? The self-control unit. So there you go with all that. And also we'll be having just a pre-announcement on 5/29/22 at 5:30 p.m. will be our next class. So we'd like to see everybody there also. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. One thing I'd like to say while we're turning to Lesson Plan 4, page E, Lesson Plan 4, page E, one thing I'd like to say is we really need to work hard at keeping hydrated. If you haven't experienced any problem with that so far during the warm weather, then don't. It's not great. And the reason I say this is this has an effect or has a bearing upon what we'll be talking about tonight, in fact, on how we respond to things, how we respond in conflicts, and how we respond with our anger and so forth. So if we take a look at Lesson Plan 4, page E, and look at Procedure 7 real quick. Now, if you'll notice about halfway down, it's talking about the lessons, the lessons that are found on pages 99 through 103. And then if we go to procedure number 8, which we're going to be talking about momentarily, and we look down at the bottom, we see we're talking about pages 106 and 108. So we have a couple pages missing in the middle there, 104 and 105, right? Let's go ahead and turn over to 105 for a minute, because we do want to talk about those. So page 105. Now, these are important pages. These aren't just, blank pages or anything like that. These are things that we'll want to look at. In fact, Catan, I believe, did a great job on covering page 104, the last class. And we'll just start out on 105. It's called a fine line. Every year, thousands of people, young and old, suffer at the hands of those in authority who are supposed to be trustworthy and responsible for their well-being. Notice, supposed to be trustworthy and responsible for their well-being. Now, we've heard for years about abuses taking place with one of the largest religion or church on earth, I guess. And now, one of the smaller offshoots of that, if you will, another very large congregation or a Baptist convention anyway, is now coming out with sexual abuse that's occurred for many, many years, since way back when. And we're just now really hearing a lot about that. These people are supposed to be trustworthy and responsible for their well-being, but along the way, it's sad because a few simple rules were not followed. Now, anybody that's been dealing with the Peaceful Solution for long knows that we teach children in the Peaceful Solution classes to be very aware of what's going on around them. We really do teach them not to talk to strangers. It's not just some glib response that we give them. We really do teach them not to take any kind of gifts from anybody. We really do teach that, and that's what I recommend that you really do teach your children too, and it'll help keep them away from these situations, and it will help them to know who to truly trust and who not to. Not being in strange situations with somebody that's not your mom or dad. You wouldn't want to. They go on these camping trips and they go not to get too far into that, but so trust is abused. So, however, in situations where you are momentarily powerless, you must still do your best to maintain self-control. That's what this is about. It's not about all the many things going on in the world that we could go on for ages about that. But this is about how to maintain self-control. This is not the time to respond with vulgar language or lash out, further angering the individual. So you're dealing with somebody that's supposed to be trustworthy and responsible for your well-being, though something's going on that shouldn't be. You know, you've got your secondary emotion of anger kicking in a little bit because you've been embarrassed or frustrated or disappointed. You've lost some trust in somebody, and you're kind of at a point where you're feeling very, very vulnerable. But it's not the time to respond with vulgar language or lashing out and so forth, because that's adding fuel to the fire. Adding fuel to the fire never does help. It just doesn't help. I mean, if you can imagine, that's why it's called adding fuel to the fire. If you're trying to put a fire out and you're sitting there throwing buckets of gasoline on it, do you think the fire's going to go out? If you're trying to put a fire out and you're throwing cords of wood on it, do you think the fire's going to go out? Oh. If you're trying to put a fire out and you're, throwing old clothing, pieces of construction material, wood and cloth and so forth and so on, is it going to go out? No, it's not. That's fuel for the fire, okay? So we don't want to do that. But it is time to use self-control. And that's what we're trying to help everybody with here today. And that's what you as a teacher will be trying to help get through and instill in your students, is the ability for them to control themselves. Everybody handles it just a little bit different. I know how I handle it myself, and it seems to work just fine. There might be a better way. I don't know, but it works for me. In some situations, well, always remember, although it might be the most difficult thing you'll ever have to do, and I can assure you it is, when you have an authority, someone you trust, someone you've given a lot of honor to, and you really put them, kind of on a pedestal, if you will, and they abuse that trust. Man, it's and they come at you this way. It's a very hard thing. It's the most difficult thing you'll ever have to do, to communicate with respect and not just lose completely your thought process and everything, because you're going to be so overwhelmed and embarrassed and frustrated and discouraged, But you got to remember, though, you want to communicate with respect and avoid making the situation worse, because you know why? Two wrongs don't make a right. And, as simple as that sounds, it really is a fact. Two wrongs will never make a right. It just does not add up. 2 + 2, 1 + 1, it just doesn't add up, okay? So in some situations, an authority might even tell you to do something harmful to yourself or someone else. Now, if this occurs, this is where you really have to take a stand. You have the right to respectfully decline. You don't have to start calling them names and, again, vulgar lashing out and all that, but you can respectfully decline and go to a higher position to appeal. You can go to their boss, if you will. For example, in some situations, you can say, no, I cannot do this. I know it's wrong. It's not what I've been taught by the peaceful solution, and I'm not going to do it. And you can turn and walk away. Because if the authority is trying to get you to do something that's wrong, now stop for a minute right there and think about this, okay? You really need to be very experienced in your walk with the peaceful solution and your practice of the peaceful solution to really understand what right and wrong is. You've got to be experienced, okay? Obviously, if he tells you to go over there and slap somebody in the face, you're going to know right away. I hope most people here would know right away that that would be wrong. No. Or if he tells you to go stick a knife in their tire, that's going to be the wrong thing to do. And you can respectfully decline and, go to their authority or their boss. So in other situations, it may be wiser to quietly decline, leave the situation, and immediately report the incident to an adult you can trust. You know, myself, that's really kind of the way I find that some of these situations are dealt with. In some of the things that we're going to be talking about on how to deal with things, you know, I've learned to kind of bring my whole level down. I call it numbing myself. When the situation calls for it, one of the best things I can do to remain calm is to just pretty much go numb. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to make any drastic moves. I'm going to think long and hard about what I'm doing. And so to some, it might seem that I'm just, you know, it might even seem disrespectful because there's not going to be much responding going on. I mean, I have responded in the past, and I found sometimes it's not the greatest thing to do. So sometimes the best thing to do is just shut up and slow down and look at the situation. That's how I deal with it. So remember, you're at the age of accountability and are responsible for your own actions. You are maturing and are now capable of making moral decisions, and you know the difference between right and wrong. You're practicing the peaceful solution to perfect your character. That's what we're all doing, working on that. So if you are being told to do something wrong, you should quietly decline and respectfully leave and report the incident to someone else in authority who can address the problem. And, you know, if they're more vocal about it, well, okay, you know, you've given it to them to handle, and you're sitting back nice and calm and thinking about the whole situation and seeing where it goes. And you might find out you were in the wrong. You might find out there was nothing wrong with what the person was telling you to do. But in this situation, what we're talking about is you really do know that it's the wrong thing to do. Notice the quote there at the bottom. It says, "Mark the person with positive character. He will practice self-control in all situations." How many times could serious situations have been avoided if we would have just looked at it and shut up for a minute, calm down, breathe deep, think about what we're doing, and then make the right choice. You know, stop, think, consider your options, proceed. It's hard to do, and especially if it's someone that you really do trust. Someone you might have known for a long time, you've put a lot of trust in, a lot of honor in. It can be very gut-wrenching to deal with the situation. But, you know, we're all growing up, so we've got to learn to deal with these things. It's not always going to go exactly how you want it to. Lots of different emotions flaring up in that kind of situation, and that's why you've got to be very careful. Okay, so page 104 and 105, you know, it covers a lot of stuff, and like I said, Catan went through it last class, and then 105 there. So let's go on back to the lesson plan. Now, it's lesson plan for page E, and remember we left off in that little zone between procedure 7 and procedure 8, and so now we can move on to procedure 8. So if you take a look at it, explain to students that until everyone learns to communicate with consideration, hold on to that word, keep it in your mind there for a minute, they are likely to encounter people who are out of control. Okay, so let's stop there and look at consideration. Because I do want to explain this to you. So in consideration, that is considering others. Considering others' needs, you know, stopping and thinking about it, and not just considering your own. I mean, you know what your needs are, and you're feeling like your needs are not getting met right at the time. So what we need to do is also consider the other person's needs too, because that's what they're doing also. They're sitting there considering their needs, and they might or might not be considering yours. So why don't you be the peacemaker? Since you're the teacher or the student of the peaceful solution, and you consider that other person. Man, is it hard to do? Yeah. You know, if Well, one of the things they used to say, and no offense to doctors or lawyers, but in sales, they said if it was easy to do, doctors and lawyers would be doing it, you know. So if this were easy to do, everybody would be doing it, okay? But it's not easy to do, and that's why y'all are sitting here in this class, and those of you that are online. And again, if any of you are doctors and lawyers, I didn't mean any offense by it. It's just a saying, you know, and possibly it's one that I should wipe out of my mind or try to find some replacements to go in there, you know. Everybody's still working on things. All right, consideration. So what helps here in considering others is that empathy. Empathy helps. If you can be empathetic. I know one time we had a Peaceful Solution conference, and the theme of it was ambassadors of empathy. Ambassadors of empathy. And what did that mean? Well, that meant that we as teachers and students of the Peaceful Solution that have been working on this for a while should be ambassadors of this, you know, going out to everybody, letting them know that, okay, yeah, the Peaceful Solution, we learn to be empathetic, we learn to consider others, we learn respect and concern for others. We're the ambassadors. We're the ones that people can look at us and see how we conduct ourselves, you know, with not just when we're teaching class, but when we're dealing with each other also, whether you think the person is of high office and high regard or whether you think they're of low standing, you know, you still deal with them respectfully, with consideration, and with empathy. Now, personalities clash sometimes in there because, you know, some are outgoing, some are not so outgoing, some are very quiet, some are loud and boisterous and brash, you know, which could be considered as disrespectful sometimes. But that's part of what we're going to be talking about here and how to respond. We've got to consider all these things and consider if the person, if it's just a personality clash, you know, it might not be anything but that. All right, so remember that empathy helps with being considerate to other people. So tell students that any situation where someone is out of control is a potential crisis. Okay, I just told you. And have students read the section entitled How to Respond When Others Lose Their Self-Control, which is what we're fixing to do. And putting it all together found on pages 106 through 108. Now, whether we get through all those pages remains to be seen. But surely we can turn to page 106 and start there, okay? So I would like to encourage everybody to go ahead and turn there. Page 106. And remember to stay hydrated, and we'll read more about that in just a minute, see? So that's a twofold reason for that. One is that I want to stay hydrated, and number two is I want to kind of put it in your brain to do the same thing. Because a lot of us, especially when we're busy, teachers of the Peaceful Solution and working with each other on different projects and everything, we get so busy, we don't stay hydrated. And it's invaluable, and it's a must for what's coming up here. All right, how to respond. When others lose their self-control. Developing positive character. Developing positive character. Let's turn over to page 10 real quick. Page 10 in your self-control unit. You'll notice that word developing, this is not the first time it's been used in this particular unit. You see, self-control develops other traits is what it says. Develops. So developing is something that builds, something that grows, something that's added on to layer by layer by layer. You know, it's not something you read one time and I got it now, buddy. You know, it's not like that at all. Developing and practicing self-control will enable you to develop many other positive traits. So see, self-control must be developed. And once you're developing that self-control, now that will enable you to develop some other positive character traits. Isn't that great? So we start developing. Let's go on back to 106. So developing positive character and learning about your anger triggers, we'll go there in just a minute, but Learning about your anger triggers and practicing proper communication will help you resolve conflicts peacefully. So, the communication, okay. Well, we have to remember first, this is talking about anger, learning about your anger triggers. It's not only the triggers, but let's look at something real quick on page 58, because we first have to know what anger is, right? Now, we've been through a few pages ever since we were in this section where it says facts about anger. So let's take a quick look at it as a reminder. No one ever makes you angry. You choose to become angry. Whether you realize it or not, you make a conscious choice to respond to an individual or situation with anger. You make the choice, okay? Staying hydrated will, I'm sorry, it really doesn't matter what you're drinking there as long as it's nothing that dehydrates you. But so you're making the choice, though, and staying hydrated can help you with that, too. I told you we'd talk about it here in a minute. Anger, like all other emotions, is fueled by your thoughts and how you understand the world around you. And if you think that negative thoughts that fuel and justify your anger, if you think them, then you're making a choice to be angry. Always remembering that anger is a secondary emotion that comes at you when something's going on you don't agree with. And, it's usually the primary emotion is usually something like embarrassment, disappointment, hurt, as it would be with someone that you trust highly and they misuse and abuse that trust. A lot of hurt there. Emotions just flare up like crazy. Remembering the anger that's uncontrolled can also turn to rage. Let's go back to page 106. Now, it said learning about your anger triggers. Let's do another quick reminder right there. Triggers on page 61 at the top. On page 61. And the reason we're doing this is because it's talking about triggers and how we respond and how important they are. So why do we get angry? Well, we get angry because we experienced something that's unpleasant or our expectations were not met. I mean, think about it. Really, there has to be something going on, because if everything's just going great, you're not going to get angry. If someone comes up to you and they're handing you a piece of banana split pie, which you love, and a chocolate shake or something, are you going to get angry about that? Well, maybe if they throw it at you, you might, but other than that, there's nothing to be angry about, right? You're going to get angry if something occurs where your expectations aren't met. Like they told you they were going to get you a chocolate shake, took your money, and then ran off. You might get angry about that. All right, so these reasons people get angry are called triggers. That's the reason. The trigger, and the reason they call it a trigger is because it starts a process. I don't really like using the example of the trigger on a gun, but that's one type of trigger. And when that process starts, there's no going back. There's triggers on other things. There's triggers on a painting device. They call it a paint gun. And once again, when you pull that trigger, something comes out the paint gun and it's going somewhere. So it starts a process that's hard to pull back, So that trigger that starts that process, something's starting, and you better make sure that it's going the right way and it's the right thing coming out of that gun, if you will, okay? So from a previous chapter, we learned that trigger causes something to occur. An anger trigger could be something that provokes, frustrates, or aggravates us. A trigger could be a person, situation, or experience. And remember this, on other occasions, it's our own false perception that triggered our anger. In other words, it's imagined disrespect. That's one of the types of disrespect that there is, which we'll get into in another book. That's a little spoiler right there. But there's different types, and that's one of them. It's imagined. So you have false perceptions sometimes that take place, or you've jumped to some kind of conclusion, and this trigger gets this process going. One of the things that I used to, I'm going to have to change it because it no longer exists, but it used to be whenever I got a call or had to call AT&T, or the phone company, I should say, when I had to call them, I might as well be ready because it was fixing to go off. Yeah, that trigger was going to be pulled. Well, we're past that now, so no big deal. And really, I can say that they have pretty great customer service, at least here for the last couple of years for me. So let's go on back to page 106. This is not an advertisement about different companies and different jobs, by the way. It's just trying to be realistic about the world around us and how things kind of take place. So, again, developing positive character, learning about our anger triggers, and practicing proper communication will help you resolve conflicts peacefully. That's what we're looking to do. We're looking to be the peacemaker. But everyone is not yet practicing the peaceful solution and learning to develop self-control. Remember, developing, you got to practice it and add a layer here, add a layer there, make a mistake every now and then, leave yourself room to grow. So even though you might be in control and are communicating respectfully, you could find yourself facing someone who is angry, disrespectful, and on the brink of losing control. Well, it's all right for you to just jump up in his face and let him know that you're a man and, you're not going to take this kind of junk, right? It's okay for you to do that, right? No, it's not. That's the part we got to get over. We got to get over that part with that pride and that lack of humility that makes us want to get up in their face and be just like them. If you want part of that, just take a look at the world around you today. It's worse than it's ever been. I mean, we were right on the brink of nuclear war with another major power, or two major powers is what it looks like. And we have, shooting after shooting. It's out of control. I was watching the news and there was a senator standing there saying, "What are we going to do? What are we doing?" And then another one, very disrespectful, got up in front of the governor of Texas at a meeting that he was having and got up on the floor and just proceeded to make a farce of the meeting where they were at, saying, "What are we going to do?" Trying to get his 5 more minutes of fame. But I have the answer for them, and it's right here. See, this is the answer right here. This is the thing that you've rejected. This is the thing that you, Mr. Senator, up in New Jersey or wherever you're at, and you, Mr. Used to be a Texas congressman and now looking to be the governor. You people that have that want to and think that taking someone's guns away is going to make the difference. It's not. They could pick up a knife and kill somebody. They can pick up a spoon and kill somebody. They can run through a building in their car and kill somebody. What are you going to, outlaw everything? No, you don't know the answer. Here's the answer right here. You have to teach the person before they get to that point. Even if you come now and want the peaceful solution, yeah, it can be taught, but it's going to take some time because you have to teach the people. It's not something that you go in, lock the doors, and demand everybody stay there till you're done force-feeding it in their mind. It doesn't work that way. People have to choose, and so you have to teach people so that they can choose the proper way. The young man that just shot all the children in Texas, his mind was messed up, of course. I mean, with the things he went through with bullying and so forth, from what we're seeing, some of that. In fact, that town was offered the peaceful solution. Those schools were offered the peaceful solution. And now look what this has come to. Look what you're rejecting of the only thing that would help you right here. It's the only thing that'll help you, and you've rejected it. Well, to get back on what we're talking about, learning about your anger triggers, practicing to resolve conflicts peacefully, and knowing everyone else is not yet doing that. Remember the scenario on page 96, just a few pages back, the girl, Anne, You could be minding your own business when somebody starts yelling at you and accusing you of something you didn't even do. What are you going to do then? Going to jump up and tell them, "What are you thinking? Are you crazy or something? I didn't," and get disrespectful with them. Man, that's the thing to do. That's right. That's what we've always been taught to do. That's what everybody around us would expect us to do. That's not the thing to do. You got to remember that that person is jumping to conclusions and that they're doing something wrong, and they're really out of their mind in a way because they're not knowing what they're doing. They think they're in the right, probably. In fact, turn over to page 62. Turn to page 62. Notice that it says insecurities can also lead to jumping to conclusions. So the person that's jumping to the conclusion and accusing you of something you haven't even done has got some insecurities, So what would we want to do with them? Well, if we go back to one page that we just covered, we can be empathetic. We can consider the other person. If we're considering that person that's accusing us, we could consider that, something might be going on with them today. Might be that they have some insecurities they haven't dealt with. Maybe I could help them with it. I don't know. But, trying to consider, where they're coming from. Put yourself in their shoes. That's what empathy is. Think about that a little bit. It's possible that the person has been abused all their life, or been in prison all their life, or been, lacking food most of their life, not have had the proper vitamin array going into their body and so forth. They might be dehydrated at the time, So we have to consider those things and have empathy towards that other person. As hard as it is for the person that is coming at you in such a disrespectful way, we could also consider that it could be a personality issue that they haven't dealt with, and it's carrying over into their character. Let's go back to 106. When you're in a conflict where someone is on the brink of losing control, it is up to you not to allow their behavior to influence the way you respond. You see that? It's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you to consider. It's up to you to have empathy. It's up to you to be the ambassador of empathy. It's up to you to be the example of the peaceful solution. It's up to you to show great character and respect and self-control. You teacher of the peaceful solution. You student of the peaceful solution. And I'm reading it out of the book, but it's up to us. That includes me. I'm not discluding myself. Discluding might be a new word, but... All right. So this can be very difficult to do, and the likelihood is that some of our anger triggers will be pushed. If you're not on guard, and being on guard too, being on guard is being on guard about your triggers, being on guard about your the anger sequence itself and your anger style. Turn over to page 64. Man, the clock is moving. Okay, page 64. It talks about the anger sequence. Now, whether you realize it or not, there's a series of steps that lead to feeling angry. Just real quickly, you got triggers. And those triggers, if you don't, really start handling it, can lead to hot thoughts. If you start having the hot thoughts, then you're already moving in the wrong direction very hard. Instead of thinking, I wonder what the person's been through today. I wonder how they grew up and what they went through in their life. I wonder how, they probably had it not as well as I did, in fact. What's really going on? What are they going through now? Are they constantly being abused and attacked by people around them? Is it something I can help with? Start having cool thoughts. Man, it changes everything. And then the feelings It changes the feelings that are produced by those thoughts. You know, thoughts, feelings, actions, consequences, or rewards. That's a little process there, but the feelings, you know, we've got to control that. And then knowing your anger cues, you know, go back over that page 64 and 65. That's something very important for you there. And then determining your anger style. Turn the page to 66 and 67. If you don't know what your anger style is, I think most of us now as teachers and teachers in training of the Peaceful Solution have probably realized what our particular anger style is. And sometimes they, you know, lap over a little bit. I mean, you got the withdrawal where you just turn your head, you know, and you're not talking to anybody or doing anything, and you're taking your marbles and going home, you know. Well, you know, that might not be the worst one, but yet that's still not always the way to do it. You might have people willing to speak with you and talk about the situation, and you're cutting them off. Then you've got displacement where, you know, you're mad at somebody or something and you take it out on something else, you know. Just like, hey, what are you doing back there? Are you reading a funny book during class? Bob, Bob, you know, I hit this glass or this light or something, you know. I mean, what is that, you know? Or I could just go ahead and attack. I could run off the stage and come and get you, you know. Just for your knowledge, nobody out here is reading a funny book. We're all looking at the Peaceful Solution, okay? But just an example, you know, you get mad at somebody and you want to take it out on something else. I've seen people throw phones that cost hundreds of dollars. I've seen them break the windshield out of their own car that they were going to have to pay $300 to replace. I've seen them run cars into a wall because they were mad. I mean, stupid stuff, you know? Really? Displacement and attack and withdrawal. Determine your anger style. Let's go back to page 106. You got to know these things so you can be on guard. See, you want to be on guard. That's where we're at down in the second paragraph. So, you know, you got to think about influences too. When you're talking about being on guard, you have to be aware of the influences around you, because if you're really trying to be calm and you've been practicing the Peaceful Solution and now the scenario is different and you got a bunch of people around you screaming, hit him, you know, and urging it on, man, I'll tell you what, a lot of people urging someone to do something can have a lot of effect on what occurs, okay? On the other hand, if you had a bunch of people saying, hey, everybody calm down, you guys calm down, you know, well, you're more likely to calm down. So you got to be on guard, the influences, and be on guard about your own self and your triggers and your anger sequence and your anger style. Be on guard. Or you can lose your cool, blow your top, and respond with, you know, not only anger, but with rage. You know, you can go past that point. This is only going to make the situation work. And you know what that is? I mentioned it earlier. Anybody remember what I said? Kind of like throwing gas on, adding fuel to a fire, fighting fire with fire, you know? That's not how you put a fire out. You don't put more fire on it. In situations where someone else is irritable, angry, and aggressive, you must still maintain your self-control. That's really hard to do, man. You got someone around you that's irritable and grumpy and all that stuff, and it kind of makes you want to be grumpy and irritable too, unless you've learned to practice self-control and practice it in every situation. You know, it might catch you a little bit off guard, that person being irritable. Maybe they're not usually that way. Maybe they're not usually angry or aggressive. You know, if they usually are, you might have learned to deal with it by now. But if they're not usually, in today's different, you might start considering that other person. You might start having that empathy towards them. I know I keep mentioning that, but that's the key to this thing. President Lincoln, for those of you who might not know in the younger generation, he was the President of the United States, the 16th, I believe. It's bad enough when one fool loses his head, but it's doubly bad when there are two fools losing their heads. You can learn to communicate effectively even when others have lost control and have created a crisis situation. See, the crisis situation is created by how we're conducting ourselves. A crisis exists when the outcome of a situation can be potentially dangerous. And danger isn't just, physical danger. Danger is also danger mentally, danger on messing with somebody's, well-being, danger in hurting somebody by talking about them behind their back, and it can have and it does have lasting effects. The ripple effect from talking about people, saying evil things about them, is something that you'd really never see the end to. Probably it just goes on and on and on and on. It affects their lives. It affects their work. It affects their home life. It affects everything. So this crisis can be potentially dangerous in many ways. Success in handling a crisis situation, on the other hand, and maintaining self-control depends on the way you respond. Part of the way that you respond can, remember influences and being on guard. I highly recommend that you stay hydrated, because that can have a great effect on how you respond. So, let's turn on over to page 107 real quick. Use the RESPOND acronym to help you remember how to stay in control when someone else is angry. And we're going to do that in just a minute. But back on page 106, there's a saying down at the bottom. Regardless of how a conflict begins, if it is handled using self-control, it can be resolved in a positive way. Regardless of how it began. Use self-control, handle it in a positive way. All right. So the RESPOND acronym. All right. Acronyms are created to help us remember, like a step-by-step process, for instance, in doing something with a word that we're liable to remember. Now, of course, the STOP acronym, which we've already talked about, and I don't have my little board with me right now, but STOP, stop, think, options, proceed, that's one acronym. Another one is RESPOND, the actual word RESPOND, RESPOND. Now, that's a little bit longer one, and so it takes a little work on remembering this, but R stands for remain calm. Now, the last thing you want to do in a crisis situation is become agitated and lose your cool. Remaining calm will help you think rationally and logically. Part of thinking rationally and logically goes back to thinking about the entire situation. Is this really worth it? For me to respond in a negative way, it is what has occurred here. Is it really going to make any difference 2 hours from now, a day from now, a year from now, 20 years from now? Will it really make a difference in life? Well, the answer is most of the time no. Not always, but most of the time no. And so put everything into perspective. That's part of this whole thing, and remaining calm. And then also, it's kind of like I mentioned before, and I might have described it wrong. I described kind of going numb a little bit. That's what I call when you can be moving around and going at it, and have something on your mind and handling a couple of different things, doing some multitasking and everything, and all of a sudden something occurs, and rather than getting excited and fighting back and everything, you just go kind of flatline. Calm down. Don't take everything so serious. Take a few breaths. Get hydrated. This is one of the things that can help you. Count to 10. These are all things that can help take you to what I call it's not really the numb stage, but I call it the numb stage, because you kind of take yourself to a point where it doesn't matter what the person does. You're like, it's all cool with me. Then you have time to think about the situation before you open your mouth and stick your big foot in it. I'm talking about myself here too. I'm talking about all of us, okay? So in a crisis situation, becoming agitated and losing your cool is not the way. Remaining calm will help you think rationally and logically. How long is it going to take? Well, evaluating the situation. Here we go. E stands for evaluate the situation. Now, not all situations might become dangerous, but sometimes the danger level can be higher than others. So you've got to be extremely careful not to aggravate the situation. Look for ways to reach a compromise and do what? Humbly apologize. What? Well, I didn't do anything wrong. Why would I want to do that? Go back to remain calm, R. Start there. Come on to E and evaluate the situation. And look and see what you can do to calm the situation down. If humbly apologizing is the answer, then, suck it up and go apologize, I mean, if that's the answer, then do it. Be aware, though, of this. When you're evaluating the situation on what to do, and it might take a few minutes. It might not occur right away. That's why, you get calm and everything. But be careful because of the influences that come your way when evaluating. Remember to be on guard and to remember what influences are coming your way. All right, S in respond, S stands for stay objective. So whether you were objective already or not, we definitely want to stay objective. We want to get to that point. Try not to take the situation personally. I'd like to go to page 23 real quick because 23, wow, where'd I get that? Okay. So, it's because it's in the character unit, probably. Yes, it is. Always have your character unit with you. It's, this is where it started, all right here. You can go back and see some of the basics. So on page 23 of the character unit, it says, what is personality? And it's easy to confuse personality and character, so it's important to explore this personality thing. And it's made up of certain behavioral traits that each individual has. Everybody in this room has a little bit different personality. And it's the process that you choose and how you govern your feelings, attitudes, and preferences. You might not have chosen it, very logically. It might be something that you grew up with and just built into you along the way. But remember personality and how there can be a personality clash when staying objective and trying not to take the situation personally. Personality, personally. It can be very difficult to do, especially when the other person is pushing some of your anger triggers. What are anger triggers? Well, we just talked about them. You've got to remember that. You've got to know your anger triggers. You got to know what trips your trigger. You've got to know these things. So study them, see where you're at. Ask other people if you need to, a close friend or something. You could say, what do you think my anger triggers are? Oh man, I saw you when you always do that when this occurs, Well, they could point out some things to you, It's not the worst thing to ask their thoughts on it. So using active listening in this step can help to diffuse a situation. And even an angry person can tell when someone is trying, get that? Even an angry person can tell when someone is trying to listen and understand. And even an angry person or a non-angry person or, people can tell when somebody's not trying to understand what they're saying. They're looking at their watch, they're looking over here, looking over there, fidgeting in their pockets. Yeah, okay. And doing whatever, looking at their phone, all yancy and everything. You can tell if someone's trying to listen and understand or if someone's not. Keeping it all in perspective, We mentioned that a moment ago, but page 45. Page 45, keeping it in perspective. So negative thoughts and strong emotions can cloud our ability to see the things in proper perspective and increase the opportunity to act irrationally. To see a situation in perspective means to be able to view things in their proper order of importance without overreacting. Again, is it really going to make a difference 20 years from now? Even though certain situations can trigger strong emotions, it's up to you to control how you respond. Keep it in perspective, okay? Let's go ahead and move on to P, the P in respond. Practice being polite. You know what that means? It means to do it. How do you practice being polite? Do you wait until someone's angry and coming at you, and then you say, I'm going to practice being polite? It's not going to work for you. If you're not practicing it already, when the pressure comes, you're not going to do it. You got to practice it in your normal day-to-day behavior. You know, when you were coming in the door to the class tonight and you bumped into somebody, oh, I'm sorry. Here, go ahead. Yeah. Someone dropped their book in front of you. Oh, hey, can I get that for you? Oh, thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Can I help you with that? You know, there's a multitude of things you can do to be polite, and we all need to work on that. I'm talking about myself too. And I know pretty much everybody in this room to different degrees, right? And I could say that, you know what? We all really do need to work on this and practice it. And I'm sitting here looking at different faces and everything out here, and I know there's many of you that do this, and you know, don't take it wrong by any means. I know there's many of you that do this. And some of you more than others, some of you more than me. I need to work on it, probably more than most of you, okay? So let's keep that in mind. Let's really work on that. Let's practice being polite. That way when the pressure comes, it's not as hard. So you can maintain your self-control by always being aware of your words and the effect that they can have on others. What you say, how you say it, it can either improve or worsen the entire situation. Remember, it is what you say, how you say it, and to whom you are saying it that count, okay? Now, the O in respond, overcome the desire to retaliate. Oh boy, but it's so much fun. Oh man, it feels so great to sit there and think about what you're going to do to that guy because of what he did to you, right? No, you know, you got to overcome that desire to retaliate. You need to overcome the desire to want to yell or fight back. And remember, you can walk away whenever it's appropriate to do so. And I might say that that on page 29, that's a great time that you could go back over the note to you, the teacher, on what you're trying to get across to your student, because helping them to understand the range of human emotions and what they are and what to do with them. And you know, you can start over and go through that whole chapter, man. Emotions are the key here. So negate the negative. An angry, out-of-control person can be very negative. This is the N in respond. The use of vulgar language, threats, and racial slurs are quite possible. Now this is already after the point of anger and, you know, disagreeing with somebody and you know, you've already got past you've been really practicing being polite and everything, but they've just gone too far now, so you're past that. And you've already gotten past the point of considering them and their needs and you know, being empathetic and putting, you know, walking a mile in their shoes and you know, you didn't know that they were abused all their life and tied to a pole and made to eat dog food half their life as a teenager. And so, you know, but none of that matters to you now. You're past all that. And so here you are and you're mad. So it's okay for you to yell at them and cuss them out and everything? Well, no, it's not. In an emotionally charged situation, it's up to you, the one who is in control, not to get caught up in all the negativity. There's been so much of it. I mean, I see, I keep an eye on what's going on in the schools around us quite a bit, and I see the things that are taking place with teachers and students, and man, it has gotten out of control. It is like, what is wrong with everybody? I mean, so many teachers are, going to prison for having, wrongful encounters with their students, and doesn't matter what age they are, and all these things are occurring, and it goes back to basic things, just like, hey, really, if you're going to have a 20-year-old teacher in a classroom, then make sure that and they're, female, for instance, well, then make sure the rest of the class is female too, not a bunch of 17-year-old boys. I mean, just some basic stuff, just duh. Don't do that. Don't open that situation. Well, people should be able to control themselves. Well, why would they? You haven't given them the peaceful solution to even learn in the first place. And if you had, well, you wouldn't even be doing this in the classroom and letting that teacher go in there in that situation and putting her in harm. And she wouldn't be wanting to in the first place. So, it all goes back to our lack of accepting that we need to teach people, okay? We want to force everybody through new laws, new laws. No, we can't do that. All teenage students will have to conduct themselves respectfully with the young teacher, and all young teachers will have to conduct themselves respectfully with all the young students. And okay, well, that's already a law, I think, isn't it? Make another one. What's it going to do? This is the only thing that's going to help you. I mean, really. Anyway, so you being the one in control, if you've been learning the peaceful solution, not to get all caught up in this negativity, whether it be, that type of negativity or aggression. In this case, most of what we're talking about, I believe, in this class is aggressive behavior and keeping conflicts to a minimum. But it all applies in everything you do, in every decision that you make. At work, at home, in class, someone doesn't have to be fighting with you for there to be a conflict. Being determined, so respond. The last letter in the acronym RESPOND is D for determined. Now, being determined means setting your mind in advance. Have you heard that before? Setting your mind in advance? Seems like I've heard it before in the peaceful solution. So see how all these things we've learned in the past come together in bits and pieces along the way in what we're learning now. And so the more you work at learning those things when we're focusing on them deeply, the better understanding you have as we move on to deeper things. So setting your mind in advance to maintain positive communication, even in situations where someone else has lost control. And remember, not only you, but others are also going to have curveballs and pitfalls, considering the other person, having empathy towards them, understanding that they too have curveballs and pitfalls and have things that come their way that they're still trying to work on and so forth. And so not only should you leave yourself room to grow, but you should also leave your brother, the other person, your coworker, your spouse, your child, your parent, whatever the case might be, you need to leave them room to grow also. All right? Well, so on that note, I think we'll go ahead and close out right there. And we'll be starting on page 108 for the next class. Page 108. I'm going to put my marker right there so I don't forget. Hopefully you will too. And again, we're in the self-control unit. And don't forget to stay hydrated, drinking whatever you can that hydrates you. I highly encourage it because it will help you in controlling yourself and controlling the stress that can help you control anger and the way you respond to whatever might be taking place in your life. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and we sure do appreciate it, and we hope that everybody's learning and really taking these things in so that you can share these with your students as a teacher of the peaceful solution. And hey, if you're out there in a school somewhere, or you're a principal or a teacher or a parent, remember, really, the peaceful solution would solve all these problems that we're seeing out there right now in the schools, if only it would quit being rejected. Okay? All right, thank you for coming. And next class on 5/29 and at 5:30, okay? Look forward to seeing you.